Hello, freak bitches. So you're working with Rick Rubin now.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, Rick's fantastic.
What is that like though for you being like a guy who's kind of like you've kind of controlled everything before, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
So what is it like for you to have Rubin in the mix and
Yeah, well, Rick's a friend, so for me it was like I was sort of at a low point, and he kind of picked me up when I was down. So it was like I didn't mind sort of trusting him with like the head part of it all. Mm-hmm. Kind of like you deal with that part, and I'm just going to sort of be the performer and the weird guy in the corner. And
did it give you relief?
Oh yeah. I felt like it allowed me to focus on the music and the performance, and sort of just freed me to just let whatever, because sometimes you can psych yourself out. I don't know if that makes any sense. Like,
yeah,
you can have a really good song, it's a good song, and then you start second guessing yourself, and then you start thinking, well, maybe this song's not good enough, and then that'll infiltrate into your performance, as opposed to being free. Like, hey, I've just got a good song, and if that one doesn't work, I've got another good song. So letting Rick kind of do the picking and choosing, and that's a good take, and that's a good song. It was just like, okay, I'm just going to kind of just go down this road. It took me back to sort of a more innocent way of approaching the work, and I'm very grateful to him for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's got to be quite a mind fuck to create something and then practice it and rehearse it over and over again and tweak it and mess with it and not know really, like, almost not be able to be objective anymore.
Yeah, well, the weird thing is I hope people can appreciate how I mean it, is like, at one point when my ear was really to the ground, I was able to do that. I was both able to be objective and subjective, be the writer and be the producer.
Right.
And I hit a lot of home runs. So then you get kind of like, I know what I'm doing.
Right.
So then when it stops working, you have two choices. You can blame yourself, which is the natural thing you should do, or you can blame others. And once you start blaming others, now you're in this hall of mirrors.
Yeah.
Instead of raising your hand and saying, okay, I've had a good run, now I need, like, it's like getting a coach or something. Like maybe a guy goes on a losing streak and needs to bring in a new coach just to say, I think you need to work on your offense. You know what I mean? Just somebody to tweak you.
Yeah.
But when you're flying 1,000 miles an hour and you're selling gazillions of records and making all this money and you're surrounded by a bunch of sycophants, they're not going to tell you, hey man, you need the doctor to come in and kind of sort your head out.
Yeah.
So then you start going this way, and then that's when it gets like hall of mirrors. So that's where my own hubris sort of got in my own way. I couldn't accept that I got on a losing streak and then, go to somebody like Rick and say, hey, I need some help. I need some objective help.
Did you feel yourself, like when you were listening to the music that you were creating, did you feel like you were on a losing streak?
No.
So it sounded...
I couldn't intellectually understand why I was failing. It didn't make any sense to me. And sometimes it's just generational. It's the market changes, whatever. It's not personal.
Right.
It feels incredibly personal, which is why it's easier to blame somebody else.
Right.
Like, you don't understand the depth of my work here. I'm so deep, and you're not following my meta path or something. You know what I mean? And look, it's most entertainment is popular, right? I mean, you're a comedian. I mean, it's like if you get up and tell a bunch of jokes and the audience doesn't laugh, whose fault is it?
Well, the mind fuck of music to me has always been very fascinating because you guys create it in like a vacuum almost. Totally. And then you bring it to the people. Like when you release an album, they get it and it's done. It's like, holy shit, here it is. And a big fan plays it for the first time and they're listening to it. They're like, oh, like it's all. Whereas we have ideas and I need an audience to create. Like I need to be around them. I can only create so much on a laptop. Most of it has to be like fine-tuned and refined. So by the time I record something, I already know it works.
Yeah.
It's already been tested.
Right, so go back to my point. If you get on a winning streak and you're creating things in a bubble and then they work, well, then you want to take all the credit for it.
Yeah.
You forget all the 1,000 hours in the bedroom that you listen to Jimi Hendrix or, Bauhaus or Merciful Fate or whatever, like that gave you all these ideas. You don't want to give them credit. You want to be the author of your own success. And everyone starts patting you on the back and...
Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's fine.
You're very introspective in that regard. Like you have a very
failure would do that to you.
Is that what? But you say failure though, but you still have massive amounts of fans. You're still deeply respected.
Yeah, I'm weird in that I've always been willing to talk about the process, which again is anti-gimmick, but also I've always approached it more like a performance artist in that I'm after the bigger message of how work intersects with fame, intersects with personal feeling, intersects with personality and how people perceive things. Like, I like all that weird Andy Kaufman uncomfortability. That's part of my attraction. Right. So I've been willing to use myself as the battering ram, which is how I end up becoming a meme.
Right.
Because people latch onto these personalities I've created, which of course are ancillary to my real personality.
Right.
But they don't necessarily want to give me credit that I'm a sort of controller of the forces at play. So if I say something dumb, people assume that I'm dumb. It's hard for them to assume that I'm saying something dumb on purpose because I want a reaction.
Right. Yeah. When you become a hugely successful musician and your life becomes touring, big arenas, doing radio shows, getting on the bus, getting on the plane, all this stuff, does it make it difficult to have like the time or the actual experiences to continue to create?
Yes. Because you get so deoxygenated in the bubble that you start writing songs about being on tour.
Yeah, like comedians will tell jokes about airline food. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You end up becoming sort of like, you're trying to take people in the insularity of your experience, but it's not that interesting.
Right.
And at some point it becomes unrelatable.
Well, I always said that about, like, I mean, there's a lot of bands, but some of the great Allman Brothers or Leonard Skinner, like, they had a bunch of songs about leaving, about getting away from women. You know, Lord, I was born a rambling man.
Rightly so, yeah.
There was so many songs about just getting away from women.
Yeah, the other day I heard that Crosby, Stills, Nash song. It's like, just a song before I go. It's all about he's going on tour and they go to the airport and it's uncomfortable. It's like, it's such a going on tour song.
Yeah.
But it's like, it's really not that relatable to most people.
No, to a lot of people it's not. Yeah. I mean, Skinner had a shitload of those. They really did have quite a few songs about, like, getting the fuck out of Dodge.
But they were good.
Oh, dude. I'm
Such a great band.
Giant fan. I mean, they're probably the greatest thing to ever come out of Florida. It's arguable, you know?
I'm trying to think who else came out of Florida.
Jim Brewer?
I thought we were just talking about music.
Did Creed come out of Florida?
I thought we were just talking about music.
Yeah, I don't have anything else when it comes to music. Who else? Pitbull? Yeah. It's so did you feel it while it was happening? Like when you're doing these mega tours and everything, do you feel like the staleness in the creation?
I did.
Yeah.
I think what I tried to do is change personalities, change musical directions to kind of re-infuse things. And it worked up until a point, until my mother died, like in 96. In a weird 3-month period, the drummer left the band, my mother died, and I got a divorce in like a 6-month period. And so I try to use that as fuel to sort of pivot where I wanted to go musically. But I wrote this very introspective, dark record, which a lot of people really like now, but at the time it was like so antithetical to this big rock machine. Yeah, I was like castigated for being an idiot, and I went from golden child to idiot, you know, in one fell swoop. And
well, so many great artists are a prisoner of their early success in a lot of ways.
and rightly so. You know what I mean? I have a much greater appreciation for the zeitgeist effect of the public. I don't know if that makes any sense. It's like how many zeitgeists did Elvis have? 3. U2's had 2 or 3. Frank Sinatra had 2 or 3 or 4. I mean, there's something about when it all seems to make sense, like the public's fascination, the artist's place in time, the work that's being created. There's a sense of like familiarity, but also something is happening and everybody wants to take part in it. And so I have a much greater appreciation for that moment. The ego of the artist wants to convince yourself that you're always in that moment, and that's just impossible. That's just impossible. There's just no way. It's just the cyclical nature of creation.
That's such an important thing to say for people listening, for people that like struggle with this themselves. To hear someone like you say that.
Yeah, it's actually kind of makes sense. It's like typical example. It's like falling in love and expecting to feel that feeling forever.
Right.
It's just not going to happen.
You're not going to feel the same. No.
I would argue if you are, there's something wrong.
Right.
It's
go
just,
to the doctor.
You haven't matured into a deeper relationship. So in the same thing, an artist needs to mature into a deeper relationship with their work, or their relationship with the public, or their relationship with themselves. And if you can do that, and you look at great examples, Johnny Cash, Neil Young, Tom Petty, when they get there, everybody comes back, Bob Dylan, because they think, okay, now you're giving me some new information.
Yeah.
This isn't just a riff on the thing that you gave me before. And I think the public has shown over time the willingness and the ability to follow artists if they're willing, if they're able to go to that place where they mine out something new that actually is like a cultural contribution and not just sort of more of what they already know.
I think that's so important for you to talk about. I'm so glad you do, because for upcoming artists and in all sorts of genres, just people who are involved in creating, to hear someone as successful as yourself talk about the various struggles of the mind and of momentum and the different stages and various points of your career.
Yeah,
so important.
Yeah, the music business plays this Jedi mind trick on you, where the whole thing's set up to be rapacious and take advantage of your weakness.
How so?
Well, it's like I'll use the music business as an example, and I'm sure there's plenty of parallels across the entertainment spectrum. You struggle to get the contract, and then the contract is sort of the indentured servitude type of thing. Our first contract was 7 albums, essentially 14 years. So I signed that contract when I was 23.
That's crazy.
Okay, so I'm signing at 23 years old. I'm signing a contract that's supposed to take me into 37.
You're signing a contract for more than half your life.
And if you look at the shelf life of most artists, it's 4 to... So they're basically anticipating your entire arc.
That's so crazy.
So you don't have any leverage, other than that they want to sign you. You sign the deal, and then it becomes this weird dance of like, can I sustain success?
Yeah.
If you get success and you have leverage, they'll get out of your way because you're making them a lot of money. But the minute you're not making them as much money, then they step in and they start playing these Jedi mind tricks on you. We know what to do. The public's going to forget about you. I mean, I've heard all these things. Like, this kind of weird, like, yeah, you're in the room, but, we're the arbiter of whether you can stay in the room.
That's the weird position that record companies had for a long time that they don't seem to have anymore.
I would argue against that, because
they still do.
Well, they've moved to a different set of circumstances, and I'm not as conversant as I once was. But one thing they do with certain younger artists, but I think particularly more in the pop realm, is they do these 360 deals, where it's like,
right,
if you get a perfume deal, like your whole world,
they own you.
We own a piece of your whole world. And fame is such a great quotient in American life now that you can see where kids would trade fame and be willing to give away like the profit part.
Well, they'll take a risk at the long-term ownership.
Right. So let me jump in there. So if you actually survive the cut, let's call it phase 1. You're successful, you're a name, and now you're in a place to either renegotiate or your deal is up or whatever. I once had a conversation with a very powerful music executive, and I said, and I was friends with the guy, so I was like, give me the insider psychology here. Now that I know the game that you run, what do you tell people like me when they get here? And he says, oh, it's just, there's always a price. So they know that even if you get through the matrix of the whole thing and get out the other side, that there's just a dollar amount that will buy you back in.
Whoa.
They're not worried that you'll go independent. And in fact, if you look at a lot of the machinations of the music business over the last 20 years, especially with the rise of the internet, it's to keep people in the system.
Yes.
They don't want true independence.
Right, but it seems like...
Look, I'll give you... Look no further than the deals that the record labels cut with the streaming services. They got into ownership equity deals with the streaming services in an arrangement for them to have an equity position. They agreed to very low rates for the artist's music.
Oh, so that's
when you listen to Bob Dylan's song on Spotify, Bob Dylan's not getting a lot of money for that. But as Spotify and the other streaming services raise up in their equity position, the labels benefit. So the labels pimped out their own artist to take a greater equity position in a rising business. It's like You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They weaken the artist's position to take a better position at the table themselves.
That is fascinating. And they weaken the monetary position of compensation in order to get equity in the company.
Right. And now you see it where Metallica's management, for example, has come out and especially U2's former manager, Paul McGuinness, come out. They're trying to take on YouTube now. Because YouTube's got this weird, funky position where they'll pay on licensed music, but they won't pay for covers, and you know what I mean? Like YouTube's like one of the big targets of the business because whatever deal they agreed to with YouTube 10 years ago was super weak. But again, these are all machinations that go on above the artist's spot.
Right.
And you quick thing into your world, when McGregor leapt out and did the fight with Mayweather, he creates this whole different set of dynamics because he can run his own game.
Yes.
UFC can't pay him that kind of money. And last I heard is like maybe he's going to do another fight. So I don't want to get totally into that, but my point is you see where those dynamics where people step outside the system, it changes the game.
Yeah.
So it's actually kind of, you could now and I don't want to, I've never met Dana White, but if Dana White could go back in a time machine, maybe he'd pay McGregor more money to keep him in his world. Because now that he's out,
I don't think Conor would have accepted that.
Okay,
I think he recognized the unique opportunity that he's in, so he probably wanted to be a part of that.
I'm talking about stuff as a fan. You're on the other side of the fence. But my point is when you see when somebody breaks out of the sort of the matrix of how the game is set up,
right? It
creates this weird thing.
Yeah, and there are a few today, though, that have kind of figured it out through YouTube and all these different online...
I think Chance the Rapper, I don't know much about his business, but I know he's sort of worked out this other model for himself.
Yeah, Jamie knows a lot about him.
I know he's getting money from way other places than just the traditional record contracts.
God bless him.
Big deals from major companies like Sprite and other...
And he's still independent, right? Technically?
That's the word they would use to market him, like he's an independent artist, but he's got a machine behind him, so I don't know if he's independent,
Yeah, I'm good friends with Sturgill Simpson, and Sturgill's tried to educate me as to how the record business keeps people in the fold with the owning your merchandise and your likeness forever and all these different things. It seems crazy. Like
we actually signed a clause, and it said, and this contract pertains to this universe and any universe not yet discovered.
What?
We signed that clause.
Who wrote that?
The record company.
Jesus fucking! What are they, Scientology? That is crazy.
Like we literally had to sign a thing, and it was like, this contract pertains to this known universe and any universe not yet discovered.
That is fucking insane. That is insane. Like if someone found a parallel universe somewhere and they figured out they could sell music to them. It's a parallel they haven't heard of the Smashing Pumpkins. Get over there quick. Shoot a rocket ship filled with cash over there.
Well, why they put that in is because when they transitioned to CDs, the contracts didn't account for CDs.
Oh.
And what they did, it's a very classic thing is, so they had to go back and renegotiate all the deals because of the CD technology. This would have been like whatever 80s. So they went to every artist and they said, look, it's this new technology and we're not sure it's going to work. So you got to take a price cut. We're only going to pay you 75 cents on the dollar so we could advance the new technology.
Oh, Jesus Christ, they're dirty.